Data Voyagers.
Every conference this year had a similar agenda. The keynotes are about agents, the breakout sessions are about automations, the product announcements are about what AI can do now without human involvement. We spent months measuring capabilities, how many tasks can it complete, how fast, how accurately. And somewhere in the middle of all of this conversation, a different question got silently skipped. What we humans are supposed to do. And this is not like a philosophical question, is a practical one. If the agent books the meeting, writes the summary, does the analysis and flags the decision, what is the role of the person whose name is in the org chart? What does accountability looks like when the work was done by a system? What happens to judgment, to experience, to the kind of thinking that takes years to develop when AI can approximate the output in seconds? These are not rhetorical questions, these are operational ones. So this episode is not about AI, it's not about technology. We have plenty of those. This episode is about the people. Hello, Data Voyagers. I'm Igor Alcantara. Oi, pessoal. And I'm here as always with my great friend and brilliant co-host, Angelika Klidas. Angelika, thanks for being here.
Hoi Igor, hoi allemaal. Fijn dat jullie er weer zijn voor het Nederlandse publiek.
All right. So, and we have, for the second time, a great guest to our podcast. So would you mind, I mean, everybody knows him, but would you mind do the honors and introduce him?
Yeah, we have with us the amazing Mike Capone, CEO of the firm Qlik. Thanks for joining us again in this amazing entourage. It's really unbelievable what was achieved by your team.
Oh, thank you. Look, it's a great pleasure to be back with you guys. I'm really excited, and yeah, I'm really proud of everything that's going on here at this event. It's been a great couple of days.
Yeah, I learned a lot, and for me, what I found the most interesting and greatest feeling of all time is the friendship that I'm experiencing those 2 days. Thank you.
Oh, you're welcome. Yeah, look, Qlik is I said it on stage today. It's a community. You know, it's not a company with customers. It's a family. It's a community of great people, and a lot of us have been around it for a long time. So I'm glad you feel that way.
Yeah. So I think we would start with the questions, and actually it's my favorite topic. As you know, I write about people and business, and we draw some questions. I have them on paper because I don't want to forget them. So everybody is talking about what AI agents can do. So when agents handle more the workflow, what does the human role looks like today?
Yeah, well, we did spend a lot of time talking about agents and automation and the need for quality data underneath agents. So if you take action, you're confident, and all those things are true, and we're evolving that way. None of this absolves humans from their responsibility to make sure that outcomes are correct, right? There's lots of examples right now where the world is starting to catch up, to automation and agents. I was told recently that there's a law passed in Florida in the US where it's illegal for an agent, a non-human, to deny an insurance claim, for example. Like a human has to be involved in that, right? So starting to see those types of things happen. Other instances, airlines who, bots make a mistake, and give bad customer service advice and offer rebooking and the customers, the airlines have to honor that regardless of who made the call, a human. So I think our role as people is going to shift. I think humans are critically important to the equation, but now it's more about creativity and what can be done on the one side, and on the other side, it's about oversight and monitoring to make sure that the outcomes that we're getting are real and true and human. Right? We have to forget there's a human aspect to this. Like, we had a great guest speaker yesterday who talked about joy and kindness and humanity in the world, and that's not going to go away even if we automate a bunch of stuff, right? Yeah. So I just think that our role shifts dramatically from, I think, the drudgery of small tasks to the awesome responsibility of oversight.
Yeah, I think what I always try to explain is AI does the work, the human decides. That's right. Yeah.
So a lot of companies think that, using AI is basically picking a tool and basically installing the tool and starting using, but there is a big gap between adopting AI tools and actually knowing how to use them. So my question is, what does real AI literacy look like, and how do organizations close that gap?
Yeah. Well, I feel like we're coming around again, right? So, you and I have spent a lot of time debating and discussing and cultivating data literacy. And, we always talk about data literacy as being the next great skill. So in the Industrial Revolution, it was reading and writing that got people out of, sort of factories into knowledge work. And now AI literacy, right? And it is the ability again to have critical thinking, the ability to actually judge AI and make sure that we're applying it the correct way. And I think that's what we're faced with as a society today. And what's interesting for me, particularly in my role, is look, society's ability to legislate, to govern technology, it never keeps up. The technology advancement always outstrips society's ability to govern it. And but what that does is puts huge pressure on the private sector who's developing the technology to actually be responsible about it. So I do spend a fair bit of my time thinking about it. We have our AI council, which is people from outside of our company, outside of business. In fact, they're much more involved in pedagogy and working with governments and things on ethical uses of AI and et cetera. And also talking to my peers at other software companies, like, are we doing the right things here? Just because we can do something doesn't mean we should do something, right? And if we're going to do something, are we being responsible about it? And can we prove it? Can we prove it?
Exactly. That's the big. I think that's the biggest responsibility that you have as a CEO of a company.
Yeah. In case I needed more weight on my shoulders, Yeah.
Sorry to put it on. Sorry to put it on.
Yeah.
Yeah. And you just said it, that it's getting that fast, that pace is rapid. So how do you think about the tension between the speed and getting it right?
Yeah. I mean, that's always been since the beginning of time. Something. Every IT project, right? You can get it right or you can get it fast, right? I heard that from my early days of being a CIO, and there's some truth to it, but. The reality is you have to build frameworks. The first thing you have to do is take a step back and say, what's a framework for developing, AI platforms, AI applications, and does it have the right checks and balances inside of it to make sure that we're doing the right things? If you do that versus just shotgun approach where every project is different and there's no framework and there's no checkpoints, there's no governance, like that's where mistakes happen. And where you lose velocity actually, because you end up doing things over, and that's in a good case. In a bad case, somebody gets fired because you made a bad decision. So what we encourage our customers to do, and what we do internally at Qlik, is we have a framework for AI deployment. And actually, believe it or not, if you get the framework right, velocity increases. It doesn't decrease because everybody understands the process. They know what they need to go through. They know checks and balances. So we feel pretty good about that process, and I think our customers are starting to adopt it as well.
Yeah, you see the same happening in organizations, right? They use all kinds of LLMs, all kinds of tools, without even considering the risks that are there. And then you have to add the AI governance element in it as well,
right?
So it will be safe for the organization.
Yeah, you just can't do that over and over and over again. And we see bottlenecks very often in general counsel's offices, from legal very often, from compliance very often, because they haven't established framework and guardrails and guidelines. So every project gets reviewed independently, and it just slows everything down. So, what we did inside of Qlik with our legal team and our compliance teams is we set out a set of guidelines and framework for AI. So for example, like a lot of companies we're deploying Cloud Code, to help accelerate R&D investment. But the engineers have very strict guidelines that they adhere to. They're not so strict that we can't get work done, but they know going in what's acceptable, what's not acceptable. So for example, like open source, like you still have to run your code through open source scanning to make sure we don't deploy something that doesn't belong to us or isn't, et cetera. And once those things are in place up front, then everything becomes easier. Where people get bogged down is they don't do that work, and then everything's a conversation.
Yeah. But we can continue about that.
Yeah.
So this episode is about the humans, and one important aspect is what I've seen with other companies. When they talk about implementing AI, they usually forget about the people. Actually, we had like a panel with partners on Monday that was part of, and one of the things that we discussed is like, A lot of times we forget even about the culture when we implement in AI. And more specifically on the people, AI is not a person. AI cannot be legally responsible for its actions. So when AI drives a bad recommendation or makes a flawed decision, how should organizations think about the accountability?
Yeah, well, it's cultural, right? It's absolutely cultural. I'll give you a great example. You may have seen in the presentation today, Roberto Sagon, our Chief Customer Officer. Probably the place where we've made the most progress the fastest is in our customer success organization and how we interact with customers. And we built a really amazing AI-driven platform based on our own technology that essentially gives our customer service reps and managers all kinds of information about customers so that every interaction can be productive and positive and knowledgeable. But every Friday, once a week, Roberto hosts a town hall for his whole team. Every Friday, every week. It's an expensive meeting. But, and they discuss this, and they discuss like, what's the role of CSM? What's the role making sure that, you're not just blindly following, the recommendations that you get, that you're applying critical thinking to it. And we keep it in front of everybody all the time. And we remind everybody all the time that, look, if you tell a customer something, you're still responsible for it, whether you thought of it or AI thought of it. Like, you're delivering it, it's your customer, and the outcome is yours. But every week we go back, and it's a bi-directional kind of conversation. So then we're getting feedback from the reps about what's working, what's not working. We're answering questions. Look, we're works councils in Europe, and so we're very transparent and upfront with them about what we're doing and how we're doing it, and that's the only way that this works. Transparency, dialogue, and conversation. Feedback loops.
Exactly.
Angelika, that's right. Feedback loops are really important.
Yeah. So you have led organizations to major transitions, right? We had some at Qlik. What does it really take to lead well in a moment like this, in this crazy time where the pace is that rapid? What are leaders getting wrong right now?
Look, I always like to say that as a CEO, I'm not right all the time. I'm not even right half the time, I don't think. My job isn't to get everything right. My job is to make decisions, but then my job is to be critical of those decisions when they're not working out, right? I think the biggest mistake a lot of leaders make is they're afraid to admit that they messed it up. I made a decision, it wasn't the right decision. I'm gonna walk it back, and we're gonna do something different, and I'm gonna own it. And it's okay, because not making a decision is in a way making a decision, right? So I think what hurts the most is paralysis and inaction. So we have a culture in Qlik where it's like it's okay to make a bad decision, but it's not okay to perpetuate a bad decision. You have to walk it back. And in AI, look, we're going to make some missteps. Some things don't work, and but we got to say, okay, we tried, didn't work. Let's admit it and let's back up and let's try something different. And I think that's the only way you can live in an age of uncertainty like this, where the technology is advancing so fast, and the capabilities are advancing. And so that's kind of how we think about it. We're gonna continue to make mistakes. But what we're going to be is honest about it.
And if you look at the customers of Qlik that are all around us here, what advice do you have in this era, in this new amazing era of AI?
You can't hide. This isn't one where you're going to put your head in the sand and wake up. Hopefully you wake up one day and it's going to go away. It's not going away. It's coming. But you don't be scared. Lean in. There's a place for everybody in this world of AI, but you do have to own it, and you do have to educate yourself, right? We used to tell people, you're responsible for your own career. Like, if you're waiting for somebody else to promote you or drag you along, look, it's great if you get it. Like, I've had great mentors along the way, but I always knew that I had to own my career. It's the same thing with AI. Like, no one is going to make you AI literate, right? You should step forward. The good news is there's lots of resources out there. AI can teach you AI, right? So I think, seek out learning pathways in terms of getting yourself AI literate. Seek out people, mentors, and go do it. And then you're gonna be fine. But what you can't do is just close your eyes.
Exactly.
So one final question. So we spending a lot of time asking what AI can do. Mike, in your opinion, what questions we are not, you think we're not asking enough?
My biggest worry about AI is that the we won't, all, by and large, all of society won't get the benefit of it, right? Like with a lot of things like AI, a lot of technology advancements and things, it gets distributed unevenly, right? And that's problematic, right? We don't want the value of AI to accrete to the big players of the world. Like they're all making a lot of money right now, but as you know, enterprises are still not getting a lot of value. And I think society in general isn't seeing the kind of benefit we should be seeing from AI advancements. I think, you know, when I was in the last presidential administration in the US, I was involved in an advisory group where a bunch of executives were advising the White House on this very topic of democratization of AI. And I think the question that we need to ask ourselves more is, are we really making sure that society benefits equally from the advancements in AI? Because right now what's happening is society, you know, I read an article today, not to digress too much, about, you know, AI cameras on buses, right? And so, and what that's led to is, you know, when people pass a school bus, when the stop sign is out, that's illegal. You get a ticket. They're writing thousands of tickets.
Like the China.
Yeah, and you can say, okay, that's a benefit to society because, okay, we're increasing safety, but actually we're not. The number of accidents hasn't gone down, but there's a technology company getting really rich off of these cameras, right? So, are we really asking the right question in that case, right? And I think that, you know, there's a million different examples of that. And again, I think the private sector has to step up. Like, I really think we have to step up and help. Yeah, we have to help. And that, so those are the questions, you know, and in, you know, as I shift my charitable priorities, are one of those things is going to be like democratization of AI.
Yeah, yeah. And the help to learn, to give the world also the help they need to actually work with AI in a safe way, and the other way around.
Right. Well, and also that we don't atrophy, right? Because my you know, I'm on the board of a university, and one of the things we debate all the time is AI going to, you know, dumb us down, right? Are we going to destroy the ability for people to learn to be critical thinkers, you know, to be creative, because now everything's just a response to a prompt, right? Because look, the reality is AI is really good at creating short-term knowledge, right? I have a question, I have a problem, use AI, I get an answer. But it's not great at creating long-term knowledge, right? It's not great at teaching people how to learn.
Yeah.
And so, you know, that's the other question we got to ask ourselves is, are we making sure that we're still teaching people how to learn, right? Calculators were invented, but we still learn long division in school, right? Because we want to teach people how to learn. I think it's going to be the same with AI. We can't give up on teaching people critical thinking.
We should. Well, thanks, Mike, for being here and having this amazing conversation. Thank you so much.
Oh, it's a great pleasure. You guys make this so fun and so easy. I really appreciate it, and I hope to be back someday.
Yeah, absolutely. Last time we spoke was at Lund, and that conversation, you know, still seems like very relevant and current and important. So we talked then about leadership, and now about the human part, but I think they have kind of intersected those two topics. So
exactly.
Yeah. Thanks again. Thanks for this great event. We love being here every year, and see you next time.
My
See you
pleasure.
next time.
Thank
Thanks,
you both.
Mike.
Thank you.
Data